Okay, to start this thing off, I will be recording this. It will be posted for the public. Oh, wait, I got one more person. I need to, you know what, cancel everything I just said. Sean is coming in. If somebody new joins us, help me remind me that I have to say it all over again. Hey, Sean, what's happening? Look at her background. Oh man, that's.
Then you just don't see all the craziness that's back there.
I hear you. I hear you.
Can you quiet down? The tea party needs to quiet.
No. Crank it up.
My 4-year-old's having a tea party, so
Crank it up. This is a good party. All right, I was just getting ready to say that we are recording this. It will be posted at a public access. Also, some of the things we're saying, I'm going to do the best I can at this mic. Some of the things we're saying might be used as data and things like that for certain publications and research projects, etc. If you're not okay with that, please let me know. And what you could do is join this class by watching the recording of all the people who are okay with it. Mike, was that kind of what I need to say? All right.
Perfect.
Good. All right. Y'all, we talked last time a little bit about the conference and some of the things that went on, and there have been several things that I've heard over the last couple of weeks that have to do with training. Okay, a lot of conversations I've had with different APGs around the country about training. Yesterday we had a board meeting. We talked about training and those kind of things. And what we're talking about is how to train staff to be able to do what an alternative peer group's treatment approach is. How do you train them? Y'all have heard me talk a million times, and remember that the way these things are, these are discussions. I lead a discussion, but I want to hear from you, because we're not, any of us, getting 10 out of 10 well. And if this is a disease, that's your goal. And it is a disease. So until we figure out what we're not doing right or what we're doing wrong, and what we need to do more of and less of, all those kind of things, we're still in the discovery process, looking to increase our success rates. So you guys are going to, as you're developing your programs, are going to come across things that even in the 50 years we never thought of, and in the 50 years we have thought of a lot. We have crossed lots and lots and lots of roads. We are, for whatever reason, just in the process of really getting it all codified and put together in things that are usable. But even then, you've got somebody wrote me yesterday, said, could you send me a family curriculum, working with families, working with parents. Actually, they said parents because everybody thinks only about APGs with adolescents, young adults. Facts are that we have used them with over 25-year-olds, and it's families and not necessarily parents. Sometimes it's brothers and sisters, sometimes it's adult children, sometimes it's aging parents and those kind of things that sit in the family meetings. Anyway, they asked me for a curriculum, and we've got lots of stuff out there already. I don't know if y'all have read Annette's book on working with families and those kind of things. It's a really good book, and if you haven't, use it. But this, and I will tell you again, historically, facilitators for APGs were not just volunteers that we went, okay, we're going to kind of train you as we go. That is not how we did it when we were our most effective. When APGs were their most effective training, this is what it consisted of. And I've gone over this with some of y'all sat through it before. I'm going to touch it again anyway. If you were going to go on to a staff, usually you were like anywhere from, in those days, 17 to 30 years old, somewhere in that age range. And they would actually, you didn't apply for a job. What happened was they would watch recovering communities of this age people, and those folks who seemed to have talent, they would call them in and say, would you like to go into training to be a counselor? You know, and we call them counselors. Now you would call them a facilitator or a peer recovery coach or something like that, depending on what kind of education and certification they have in their background. But you can use all of them. But notice the first thing you looked for was not the credential. What you looked for was people that others are naturally responding to them. In the process of looking for staff, we would actually go to AA meetings and young people's AA meetings and Alateen meetings and those kind of things, and to Al-Anon meetings, because we also hired family counselors. You know, there were parent coordinators that were paid and worked full time working with the parent programs and getting it all done. Well, that was just the first step. The next thing they said, okay, well, all right, here's what happens. You're going to go into training. It was a very minimal salary. I mean, I think I was paid, I believe it was $350 a month, you know, and it went on for, well, it was 1975 though. I mean, there was more, 75, 76, but it went on for 4 months, and I worked maybe 60 or more hours a week during that training time. All right. The first month, what would happen was you would rotate from one location to another that was using the alternative peer group, because it was a pretty big program. They had a lot of different things they were doing. So you would spend a week with the APG counselors that were working at juvenile probation or adult probation, because they worked at both all the time. They had offices in the adult and juvenile probation buildings. You'd spend a week there. You'd spend a week with younger group. That was ages 13 to 18 years old. All right. You'd spend a week with older group. And that was ages 18 to 25 years old. And when I say with the group, I mean all during the week. You'd be there for the appointments. You would be there for the planning sessions, and you just watch it happen. Once a week, you would get in front of something called the evaluation committee. The evaluation committee, well, as I said, there were 4 weeks. So those 3 I just named, you would also spend a week in a residential setting, what were hospitals at the time. You'd spend a week in the hospital. Wherever you were assigned, you would also attend the night elements, whether it's meetings for that week or whether it was, you know, the hospital parent meetings for that week. And you would go to the social function that each one of these organizations had, with the exception of juvenile and adult probation. Those were coordinated offices, but all the rest of them had social functions, including the hospitals, you know. And you would go to that social function of whatever you were assigned to that week. This is just month 1, okay? Month 2, you would be actually assigned to observe in one of those locations. Oh, also every week you would meet with the evaluation committee, as well as the program staff meeting and everything else. But the evaluation committee was comprised of the people who were running those training locations, and they would give you feedback on how you did, what you need to work on, what was strong, et cetera, and get you prepared for your next location the next week. Month 2, you would actually be assigned to one of those locations. You'd spend the whole month with a younger group, an older group, a hospital, the school. By this time, we had a school in 76, adult or juvenile probation, or one of the foster care homes. There were also sober living that had already begun, not only for adults, but also for adolescents. And every week, and so you'd take part all month long in those activities and be strictly observing. I mean, you didn't say anything. You just observed and helped out with stuff, you know. And every week you met with the evaluation committee. The questions, you know, were answered. You were given some feedback on what to work on, those kind of things. Then you got into the 3rd month. The third month, wherever you were assigned, you were asked to actually produce the activities, whether it's individual counseling, doing a new people's appointment, running the meetings, or going to the family meeting. You were actually doing that all month long with that trainer watching you do it and giving you feedback as you went through it. And then at the evaluation committee every week, they would give you more feedback on what to work for, etc. The fourth month, you were actually placed somewhere and probably where you were going to work, but you continued during that month, every week to meet with the evaluation committee. And that went on for 4 months. It was, and that in addition to that, there were didactic things you were asked to do, books you were asked to read and some stuff like that. So it was a very, very intense thing. It was a good job, folks. By the time that fourth month went down, we knew you could do it, and you knew you could do it, so that's the kind of thing that you want to work toward. Obviously, we don't have that. You're not doing that. I'll tell you, as some of the programs got to be nationwide, there were cities that were set up as training centers. From 1985 to 1986 to 1990, 91, from all 14 cities in Canada and the United States, anybody who was going to be on staff would come to Houston for 4 months and train. And it was intense. And all of the training that was done also equated to the CEUs to get licensure and certification at the time, when you returned home, etc. So that's what your ultimate, our ultimate goal as an association is, to work with everybody, put together things so we can start to do this. Because we hope that everything you do, we pray that everything you do creates more and more success. And take one city alone, Dallas, Texas, could easily have 30, just Dallas, not counting Fort Worth, just Dallas, could easily have 40 different alternative peer group locations, staffed with 2 people, okay, full-time, and all the other supporting elements. If you have a really, really good alternative peer group program and venue, that's what you'll end up with. So you don't have that. So what are we going to do? So that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to talk about, is some things we can start to do to put together what you do need. Sean, you want to introduce yourself a little bit to everybody? I don't know if you know everyone or if everybody knows you or me or whatever. No. I didn't think so. If you don't mind,
I'm the newbie.
I'm going to eat a bite of my biscuit while you do it. All right.
Do it. So I'm Sean Blakey. I'm from New Hampshire. We have a state youth treatment implementation grant from SAMHSA. And so we've created a continuum of care for adolescents with SUDCOD. And so we don't have APGs in New Hampshire. A team of from our group went to Texas in last August and saw, oh my God, what's Archway Academy and
Teen and Family?
Yeah, another residential facility, I think. And they saw APGs and they came back and said, we need this. We need to do this in New Hampshire. So I went to the conference a couple weeks ago and just loved it. And so I'm just trying to just soak everything up so we can, so we have a couple of pilot sites that are doing treatment right now that are doing just outpatient and IOP. And so we want to just build that continuum for kids so they have somewhere to go after. So I'm just a sponge.
I'm so glad you're here. It's really cool.
And I live on the East Coast in New Hampshire, and we have a very small amount of coast. So this is Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
That's your coast.
Yeah, it's like 12 miles long, I think. That's awesome. I think Maine took it all.
Yeah, I think here in Texas, Galveston's 12 miles long. I love, let me tell you, the Texas Gulf Coast is ugly. That's an ugly guy. That's an ugly coast. You never see people, hey, looky, here's the Texas Gulf Coast. You know, it's just not a pretty sight. You get
No.
down south a little ways, it's not too bad around Padre, but it's still nothing like what we're looking at here. I'm real glad you're here, and know that in addition to this group, there's a whole nother bunch of folks that watch these things online and stuff like that. So, and you're welcome we try to have them every Wednesday. And the idea is to start to flesh out some of the curriculum and take advantage of the tech to spread the knowledge we've gained.
Okay.
So given what I've just said, guys, and tell me what's going on, what you think as I talk about that, besides just we don't have that.
John, one of the things that popped into my head, trying to identify different ways to train staff, would using the accreditation manual help kind of flesh stuff like that out? Because everything in Oregon will have to be created, or try to identify different ways or organizations that could be doing similar things, but kind of as a starting place.
Yeah, the history of the accreditation manual was actually, we built it, you know, to help identify things to move towards, that kind of thing. Depending on how simplistic you are beginning, and it can start very simple. It can start with, you know, just a couple of people trying to put something together, and often does. The moment you pull up something from the accreditation manual, let's say, do you have a family group? Well, if the answer is no, then you go, well, how do I build one? The association there is to tell you, no matter where you are, what is the next step? And oftentimes it is not a great big step, it's a little tiny step. You know, it might be find a place to meet, that kind of thing. In training staff, it's very similar. So if you're going to have a parent program, you're going to have somebody to run the meetings. That's going to generate initially the input that all of y'all have heard before. Find somebody who's talented with parents. Well, how do I do that? Well, you go to some Al-Anon meetings, you know, and it's not meant to be, they are very simple, small steps. They don't always turn things out initially, but they will. Once you get some folks that are actually doing it and doing it well, then you've got trainers also. One of the things that it's kind of played around in my head a little bit is we've got some 40 different locations out there right now that are working and trying to put together, you know, APGs, and we got Zoom. Some of the new counselor, you know, prospects that you have could be involved in these classes here. These aren't set up just for directors or anything, or we could start putting together some classes, you know, specifically to talk about when you're dealing, what do you say to the family? You're the counselor of a program. New parents come in. What do you tell them? Is there a place to practice saying the words? You know, because it helps to do that rather than just go in and say, just go talk to them. That won't work out. The curriculum will help you put together those elements. Michelle or James, y'all got any thoughts?
No, and I think it's one of our big blockers is thinking towards getting staffed, and we don't even know what the hell we're doing. So how do we tell someone else what the hell to do? So, you know, like we just took our kids out on our first activity yesterday. We had 6 teens total. We went to the zoo.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. But, you know, we took them and we were parents, right? Like, we're not cool, we're not hip, and we weren't the draw, that's for sure.
Especially James. James is.
I know.
But we know of some 20-year-olds in our community who are well respected in the recovery community that Seth Welch has identified and said, you know, you should reach out to these two. And we'd love to, but we don't want to bring in wild cards, not knowing what we're getting when we feel really fragile to begin with and don't want, you know, one misstep to bring the whole ship down before we've even started. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. These are the kinds of things that we need to hear so we can get real specific on some feedback. Wild cards, you know, wild cards, you don't want wild cards. You definitely don't want wild cards. Where do you know these these couple of people from that you're talking about? Tell me about them. Let's talk about these guys.
Yeah, we've never actually met
Here
them.
we have an evaluation committee right here. Let's talk about it. Talking about new staff prospects. All right.
So our chemical dependency counselor at our high school, Seth Welch, who's really well respected around here, he, you know, attends all sorts of young persons meetings with the kids. And so he knows a lot of and has identified these two in particular. We've never met them, although James is about to start up our beach in-person meetings with the teens later today. So he may have the opportunity to meet them because we're going to allow anyone under 21 to join that for the summer. So he may get to meet them and start to assess them, but we haven't met them yet.
Okay. When you meet them, all right, what you do is you say, I want to talk. All right. And you sit down and you have some talks with them and you find out what they think about different things, you know. How old are these guys? Are they guys, girls, whatever?
One guy, one girl, and they're 20 years old.
They're 20?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Married, single, in school? You don't know yet?
We don't know yet.
And they are coming because, why are they coming?
We just had a board meeting yesterday with Seth and Hannah, and they both brought up, because we were talking about how, you know, we need people that were relatable to the teens, and we were asking them, do you guys, because they're a little bit more tuned in, because Hannah works with a lot of the times with the teen girls inside of the recovery high school, and so both of them brought up these two individuals. So.
Okay. First meeting, just get to know them. Just listen to them. As soon as the meeting's over, make yourself some notes, concerns and strong things.
Yeah.
Those two things. All right. I mean, right away after the meeting, because you'll forget, it'll slip out, you know, all sorts of stuff. You can even make some notes while you're talking, I guess, but usually it's a little bit, you know, odd feeling for folks. And you're just talking. It begins with just talking. When you've got a great big program to pull from, you know, it's one thing. You get to know folks just by watching them in meetings and stuff like that. When you're new like that, you're taking advantage of other folks who are watching people in meetings, but you're going to still need a little time to get to know them. And they're going to join you on this outing?
No, we've already done the outing. It was
Okay.
yesterday, and it was just James and I leading it.
But possibly at today's meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. I got a little confused. All right, good. If they show up, you want to see them interact. You know, that's exactly how we did it. There was you remember I kept mentioning the evaluation committee. What they were doing is sitting and watching people and families also. Watch your parent groups also. The parent that volunteers is not always the right parent. I promise you.
Yeah, and we're having a hard time. We've identified a couple of parents that seem to have a lot of enthusiasm and talent who are just, for whatever reason, they don't want to step up to the plate. They don't feel confident enough.
That'll happen. Do you think it is the confidence issue?
It's hard to say. You know, we had to miss 2 parent meetings in a row, and currently it's still myself and pretty much Michelle who's running them.
Uh-huh.
And you know, 1 was for our honeymoon, and 2 was because we were handling some personal business. And
whoa, wait a minute. What did you just say? 1 was for your what?
We got married.
Woo! This is important, but let's talk about the really important stuff.
Yes. And we asked,
Congratulations. I knew
Oh,
that, but I
thank
wanted
you.
to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. It just kind of like comes out naturally because that's what happened, and we we keep it pretty simple. So it's not too complicated,
are you talking about the meeting?
Yeah, the parent meeting.
The wedding or the meeting? Both.
Both were pretty simple. Anyways, but yeah, no one was,
No one stepped up to the plate.
and so it went dormant for 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens tonight. Because tonight we're returning, So
All right. This is a very specific piece of input too. All family groups, all parent groups, family groups will do that.
Yeah.
This is why you have to pick a parent coordinator, and you have to talk to them regularly. All right. To
Yeah.
encourage them, keep them coming. They'll figure out every excuse. You think it's hard to get the recovering people to come to meetings. Families are even harder. There's every excuse not to come. The guys in the group are totally okay with Zoom. All right. It's the family members that are like, I don't know. I just not the same Zooming, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's not the same. I don't care. We got a deadly disease here. If it's cancer, you would go ahead and Zoom. So get in touch. Zoom. Get over it. I don't know what to say. But it's the families that are most apt to move in that direction, or the new people. When that phenomenon is analyzed, what you find out is new people are not in touch. Families are not in touch with the reality here, which means they desperately need to be there. Get those couple, that one or two people, and just make them your best friends.
Mm.
You just get close. You stay right in touch. You're constantly having to get them to recommit and those kind of things. It will stop one day, but it's when they pass that new people point. You know what I'm saying? When they learn enough to figure out what we're into here, because families think they know what they're into. They are having a lot of trouble accepting that we're talking about a brain disease that is deadly and your loved one. They are caught up in the same mistaken information about substance use disorder and what it comes from that everybody else is. And they're even worse because they really haven't suffered directly in a lot of cases, or they themselves have the disease and haven't figured it out yet. You run into those, lots and lots of them in this culture. But the technique is pick one or two and just make them your best friends. Stay as close as you can and keep them right there all the time. Your family group is, without it, I'll tell you, without a positive ongoing family group, you don't have an alternative peer group program. It is an incredibly important part to the program itself. So when you're going, God, do I have to call them again? Do I have to put all of that? Remember that you're dealing with an essential element. It's like putting oil in your car, or trying to start it without a key. It's an essential element. You get a good family group, you can deal with all sorts of dysfunctional stuff in the people who are suffering.
Right.
You don't have a good family group, every time something happens with the people who are suffering, they're gone, baby. And the next time you'll hear about them, they're in prison or dead, or something. Okay. So your family group is and let them know how important they are. Tell them up front. Say, guys, without you, we don't have the solid research, but my guess is about 50%. No family group, you can kiss off 50% of your success rate. That's a guess on it, but that would be what I would guess.
Right.
Maybe more.
That's one of the things that when we send our families kind of the welcome email, we do write that you as the parent, your involvement is imperative. And before I forget, is the book you mentioned that Annette wrote, is that The Monsters to Miracles?
Yeah.
We read that as a book club kind of thing with our parent group. It was a great way to discuss specific things that were in alignment with what we're doing.
Right.
And we saw that, John, we're using Lifeway's new parent checklist
Yeah.
that you passed along to
Yeah.
us,
Yeah, I
all the
was gonna ask y'all.
recommendations. Yeah, so we're modifying that, and we're trying to choose which book to recommend. And so as the parent group is going through 3 different books, we're reading them together and discussing them so that we can
Good.
choose one book that we all collectively think is the best one to recommend to future parents.
I hear a lot about the CRAFT program for parents.
What's that?
Good program. Go
I
ahead.
can send it to you.
Yeah.
It's a curriculum that it goes over a lot of good topics in good ways. Yeah, and it's a good thing. The curriculums won't do it though. In the training process, and this is a training principle that's very, very important. Probably the most important. Curriculum is, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not the most important. The most important thing, if you'll think about what I was saying to you about developing and keeping them there, is the relationships. You build the relationships with your staff. You build it, and it is incredibly important to do that. When we talk about talent-based hiring, what are we looking for? We're looking for people who naturally build relationships, you know? So why do we do enthusiastic recovery activities? Because it's a real good place to build relationships, you know? Well, the same thing happens on the training element. If you'll think back on that training model that I described when it was most complete, lots and lots of relationship building going on. That's what's happening, on and on and on. And that's where the real training happened. Gosh, I think back on those days, and I think if we had known then what we know now about the disease and the neurological elements and everything, the success rates would have been unbelievable. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would have been like, because we had the relationships. What we didn't have was the knowledge that we have now. Now we have both. We just got to get it all, all working. Notice you can't do 4 months of training, or can you? That's a question.
Go ahead, Jared.
I think that, like 4 months of training, but also along with the training, I think if you're up and running, like right now, we wouldn't have 4 months of training, but if you're up and running, then you could also temper that with also actual work within where you've already trained.
Exactly. Perfect. The reason why I went over that old model is those folks who were trainees, they were doing stuff. They were actually helping, but they were helping with a lot of watching. And the other thing that was set up was you remember the evaluation committee meetings weekly, all right? And that feedback, take the curriculum and take the certification pamphlet, the accreditation pamphlet, take those things and build your topics that in your regular meeting with the people you're training / working, it's on the job training, it's what we're talking about here, that you sit down with them and they have a copy of it, you have a copy of it, and you can go over where you are, where you want to be, how are we doing? And it is not sometimes all that much fun. Sometimes it's great. Usually it's a combination of these are strengths, these are weaknesses, but I love you and let's work on the weaknesses. I'm not saying we're getting ready to whip you. I'm saying these are things we want to help you with because you're cool, that kind of stuff. But you have to set the times. What we found is kind of a build it and they will come kind of process. You set the times, you get the curriculum, and folks it starts to develop.
Where's the accreditation pamphlet? Is that on the APG Association website?
I think that, yeah, I think it's on the website. Yeah.
Okay.
If not, let me know and I'll send you a copy.
Okay.
Yep. One of the things, again, back to that, build it and they will come. Now, while you're developing your program, say, guess what we have now? We have a training program. Okay? And that'll force you to flesh it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it'll help you as you're moving along to pull things into it. And new people who are coming, like these two folks you're going to meet with, tell them, you know, and we have a developing training program too, you know, that we're going to be using. It's not really big, but it's going to get bigger and bigger. And you know, you're going to be a part of the beginnings of this and doing this. But it's something that we have lots of history to draw on. It's not like brand new out of nowhere. Okay. Sean, talk to me about what's going on in New Hampshire a little bit. Let me see if I can find a starting point for you there.
So right now, there's a whole lot of meetings. We're developing our practice profile, and we're also meeting with a lot of agencies that might be interested in being a host agency for it, like teen centers and boys and girls clubs and things like that.
Okay.
So we're trying to do that.
So y'all don't have any meetings going on or anything?
No, we've
Okay.
spoken to like Texas and Las Vegas and other APGs to find out, you know, what their pitfalls are.
Okay. All right. What part do you have in this?
So I work at the state level, so I would be managing the contracts, you know, I'm kind of the money lady, but I won't be running them.
Has anybody risen, kind of moved forward that if I said to you, okay, let's say you were ready to do your first meeting, you know what I mean? Do you have somebody ready to run one?
Not yet.
Okay. Have you identified anybody that you think is going to maybe work into that place?
We have a few agencies that I think are just waiting, chomping at the bit to step up.
All right. In that case, some of those folks could be tied into these sessions.
Oh, cool.
So they can start, oh yeah, definitely. Or, you know, they can go online and watch them. But because of where you guys are at, it would be a good idea if they were tied in live.
Oh.
So that we could answer some very specific next move type things, just like we were doing with some of this.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. For example, you sound like you're looking for places to meet, those kind of things. One of the things we found, one of the easiest things to get is a place to meet. You go to talk to 2 or 3 churches and you say, I need a meeting room, 2 meeting rooms for an hour and a half, and you'll find one, you know, and you've got, that covers your bricks and sticks, at least for the meetings. And the meetings are the key. They're not the only element. They're the key element, though. Without them, you don't have an APG. You can't, there's no way to do it. So they are a very key element, and it's just that kind of stuff, just simple little things that, for whatever we get thinking in certain directions, and we don't take advantage of what history has told us, you know, and taught us, and so it stalls, gets put off, takes forever, you know, all sorts of things. So please, yeah, bring them on. Pam, what are you hearing right now in your hoodie?
It's actually kind of cold. I was like, God, I need to put it on.
Mike, did you hear that? She said it's cold. It's actually kind of cold.
I know. I'm throwing eye daggers at her right now. I went outside to water my garden at 6:30 and started sweating.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a not a thing here in Oregon. I was thinking about the places, and churches are very welcoming to this concept. I have 2 churches that have been very flexible, very generous. And so that was my thought on that. But, you know, another thing that we've used to introduce the concept to parents or the guardians, in your book, John, the section that you talk about APGs, I've purchased several of your books, and that is something that I offer parents. But there is a chapter in there that I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what you
I
named
probably
it.
can't either. So
But it describes the APG. And so it kind of gives parents a starting place, like, what is this? And that's something I have found helpful. And then, you know, the parents, we have an open community family support group that we host every Thursday night. And I have used that, so you don't have to be part of the APG to attend, but I have used that as a vehicle for 2 different things: to introduce an opportunity for families to come and see and ask questions about what is this, and then, you know, they also find support from other parents who are ahead of them on the path. And then it does, the second purpose of the meeting, it does have a 12-step format, just so that parents start to understand and become more familiar with what an Al-Anon meeting is going to look like, so they're not deer in the headlight. Although this open meeting, there is crosstalk because they're new.
Yeah.
But it's been a good vehicle to kind of introduce the concept of APGs.
Okay. You just, if I haven't mentioned it before, something that you can use also, and this is old programs versus new programs. It's a very good vehicle to get out into the community. And that is, we used to call them Tupperware parties or soberware parties. And what it was a parent, you know, a couple of parents in the program would invite other parents they knew from their community to their home, and have the senior counselor or the director, depending on how things were going there, they would have somebody there, and maybe even a couple of young people or people in the group, or a couple of parents, you know, basically tell their story, you know. And what we also would do is these Tupperware parties, we would make them not just about recovery, but hey, let me tell you the truth about what's going on in this community. You get a 17-year-old in there, or the parents of a 17-year-old saying, this is what we now that we're in this book, because as you go into these meetings, the truth comes out about who lives where, what business is doing what, and that kind of stuff. And a lot of families are not aware of what's really going on. They're not, when I remember, this was in the 70s, late 70s. We would have one of the kids that might come to one of these things would say in the meeting with all of these families there, listen, almost everybody at school's getting loaded almost all the time. And there would be parents in the room that would just almost fall out. They had no idea that much getting high was going on in Fort Bend County, you know, the upper middle class suburb of Houston, Texas. And it was a big, you know, and we used to do that all the time. It was a very regular thing. And it didn't have to be that the family who hosted it was telling them, you know, that was up to them what they wanted to tell them, but it could be just a community information gathering. But the information is going to be real, that kind of thing. So that's something. But getting back to training, if you're going to do that, though, you're going to have to work, and this goes back to Michelle and James, what we were talking about. You're going to have to work with those family people, you know, on doing it. Create that relationship so they don't feel like they're alone. They're out there doing something that's never been done. Share with your prospective staff. Share with your, you know, like we were talking about, Sean. Share with parents that what we're involved with is not new, nor is it untried. That this is something that we know what we're doing, so let's do it here in this community. Share with them that they are not alone, because they are not even close to alone. And there's lots of history and lots of information that can help move us down this road. And it's a very important thing to move down this road. Very, very, very important. So where we're at right now is, okay, well, we're going to get a hold of the accreditation manual. We're going to identify that we have a training program. You know, we have a training. We're going to train you, that kind of thing. We're going to train you because we have a training program. We're going to identify some prospects for that training program, and we're going to start to interview them and check them out and kind of feel out what's going on with them. The best thing to do is watch them in action. If others are attracted to them, that's a plus. If those others are getting better from that exposure, that's a plus. Now those are the signs of talent. Talent is not somebody who walks in and can really tell you how cool they are. Talent is you can see it in what's happening. And if you can't see it in what's happening, well, you don't know if you got talent or not. You might not. In the training, what will happen is, as you're developing your local training programs, needs will dictate necessity. And the needs, not necessity, needs will dictate the next move. Okay? So the first thing is identify some folks, listen to them, talk to them, say, yes, we have a training program, you know? And then as you're talking to them, you're going to find out what their needs are. Whether it's a lot of folks who are very talented in this field have a lot of trouble scheduling and keeping a schedule. You know, they're part of their element of their talent is they're going, you know, everybody wants that because they're going, whatever. And so your training will probably, a lot of times with the talented folks you find, will start to center on how to keep a schedule, how to work with that, you know, those kind of things, and set a schedule for. See, James and Michelle are laughing at each other. Said, we need to do this.
Yeah, we have a 17-year-old we've identified who has really got attractive recovery going on, and he is a natural leader. The kids are drawn to him, and so we talk often about how do we develop Tyler into being a leader at the APG.
In 17, we shifted to steering committee.
Yeah,
it's almost as if he's hungry for an opportunity like this.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the side effects of talent is a hunger to expand that talent. It's an aspect of talent. Talent is never satisfied with just not getting used. That's one of the things. The steering committee, when we've done sessions on steering committee, you might want to go back and refresh. There's this thing called steering committee purpose, and it's every other week. You meet with your steering committee people. Let me give you a synonym for steering committee purpose: steering committee training and organization. That's what it is. And it also addresses this, looking for keeping an agenda, keeping a schedule going.
Yeah, that's why we were smiling at each other. Like, he's super talented, but
I thought you were talking about each other.
No, or me. I mean, I'm pretty scattered, but
well, I wasn't going to just single you out, but I figured.
Yeah, right. It's fun, isn't it? No, he's definitely all like, you know, but it definitely trainable, definitely a great
Cool.
prospect. So
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. We were forced into doing something actually that was unethical in those days. All right. It would be unethical now. It was, nobody ever laid out any ethics at the time. So, you know, and ethics is whatever we decide at the time. It's not something that was written on a stone somewhere. In those days, a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old was not welcome in Alcoholics Anonymous in Houston, Texas. So unlike the alternative peer group programs now, that part of the process is to get them plugged into the non-staffed maintenance programs, there was no way to do that. There was no place for them to plug in. So the alternative peer group programs kind of moved into a forever and a maintenance program. And there are issues that come about of transference and counter-transference and that kind of situation because they're staffed, you know, that are not healthy. Saying all that, what I'm trying to say is that we would hire from within in those days. We stopped that along the way as AA, young people's AA and AA opened up and made itself available more to the folks going through. We went, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And we would wait. If somebody went through one of the APGs, we would wait a year or so after their awakening. Y'all know what I mean by their discharge. We have discharge in APG. We'd wait a year or so after their discharge and before letting them come to work or anything. And that was to make sure that we weren't, you know, that they weren't caught up in the system. And that was what was calling to them. And it just was at a better ethical stance. We also, but now you don't have to do that. You actually can make those AA and Al-Anon, you know, those locations and find folks. Also, if you'll find one, they can lead you to others. Talented people are kind of flock. They're kind of a flock. They kind of flock elements, you know, and they can lead you to others. The other thing about training is there are different types of talent. You're going to have some people that a parent will do anything they say. You're going to have some people that parents don't want anything to do with them, but a young person will do anything they say, you know, anything it suggests sounds great to them, you know, that kind of thing. And so if they suggest, you know, hey, make a meeting a week, they'll go, yeah, okay. You know, we don't know what that magic is, but it's there, you know. Some people are, you remember I mentioned in the early training, there were all those different elements. And you would be placed in a certain element after the first month. That's because there were personality things that fit that element better. This begins even on steering committee, by the way. Or if you're doing, if you have a clinical element, an IOP, IOPs within alternative peer group program, intensive outpatient group therapies within, if you are funded well and you have access to a lot of talent, an IOP, you'll have actually 3 facilitators in there instead of 1. And those 3 will have 3 different personality characteristics that help that IOP move with different clients at different times. We used to have words where one of them was God Nazi. And what we were looking for was somebody that always could bring the spiritual side to bear as we were working through an IOP process. Another was confrontive, and then another was, the other side of things, the build up, that kind of thing. So as you're training, remember that not only is there talent, but there's certain types of talent, that you're looking for, and try and put them. I've seen lots of programs. They hire one piece of talent and it's in the wrong place, or being, not got enough supervision or whatever it is, and it will devolve, not evolve, but devolve, and so that kind of thing. Guys, we're at the end. I could talk with y'all forever, and y'all probably feel that way, and I'm sorry. I love meeting with you guys. I do. I just love meeting with you. Whatever I can do, you call me, okay? And you know the program and the associations here. Sean, thank you so much for coming. Everybody say bye, Sean.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
You
You
too.
too.
I love
Bye.
you guys. All right. Any
Thanks,
last
Sean.
minute? No last
Nope.
minute? All right. Talk to you guys later. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.